Hello and welcome to what is now episode 7 of The Filmmaking Behind, a series where we break down and analyse video game cutscenes to see what film techniques they utilise and how they work. Last week you were given the choice between two giant ensemble games, Super Smash Bros. Brawl or Overwatch, and the votes went by like a landslide, so this week, without a doubt, we're going to be covering part of the Subspace Emissary. So, let us begin. Now first things first, the whole story is almost 50 minutes long, and although I have recently been covering 90% of the cutscenes in previous episodes, I think this time I'll try and be a bit more selective. I'll also try to choose scenes with more unique traits to them rather than describing the same techniques over and over and over again. That being said, we are going to start with the first scene, which is pretty basic. We begin with an establishing shot out of the clouds to locate ourselves onto a floating stadium in the sky, the wind sound adding to the high up location we are in. We then whoosh closer to the stadium in order for us to enter the scene more closely, as well as to now hear the roaring crowd in the stadium. Now the music begins as we are fully established within the building, and we pan across to our first set of characters who are introduced with a simple little title card. The entire Subspace Emissary has no outright dialogue, therefore it has to use these kind of techniques to tell the audience who is who. It's pretty effective. We then get what's known as an eyeline match, which is where in one shot characters will look away to something out of shot before the next shot shows exactly what they're looking at. In this case, it's Mario in trophy form falling onto the field. And when activating, the camera pans up Mario's body as a way to dramatically give him power, as it's like he's literally growing on the frame, and so becoming stronger and ready for battle. We then get another example of an eyeline match with the characters on screen as Kirby makes an appearance. This time the camera keeps low to the ground in what's simply called a low angle shot to give the same effect of giving Kirby power given how he looks large on the frame. Different techniques for the same dominance effect. And with a final dramatic turn of the camera, we see Mario and Kirby directly composed to face off, with an additional little composition showing that they are about to go head to head. It's at this point the player chooses their character and the fight begins in-game. Now this is also the first game we've covered in this series to have fully fleshed out alternative cutscenes. These pretty simply show off slight variations to the story, and though the camera angle is different in this example, there isn't too much noteworthy to say this time. So next up we're going to jump quite a bit ahead of the story, though it's not crazy relevant really as we're now following a different group of people. The scene starts with more establishing shots, which is very necessary considering the large ensemble of characters and locations the Subspace Emissary uses, of a ruinsy kind of town. For these, the music is quite ambient and creepy as the camera slowly pans and or rotates. We then get a first look at our new character's feet as they kick a can. This alone tells us that they are a little down as kicking a can is a trope of feeling depressed, whilst their hopeless gait adds to this more. Next we see Lucas, if you know the character beforehand, walking sadly with the camera following behind him, to add a little more mystery to his identity for those that don't know him, and to keep up with that sad tone as we're slowly staying away from him. The music is also a little sad and uses a quick tune from the Mother series. The camera then rotates around Lucas in order to establish his face and name for the audience. We then start to see dark particles falling onto the ground. The shot changes to a diagonal wide shot to add a sense of danger here, as the diagonalness tells us that something is off, whilst the wide angle makes it look like Lucas is being watched or followed. Flipping the camera around, we see the particles morph into the generic baddies of the story. Primids, or Primids, I'm not actually quite sure which one it is. They're introduced here with a diagonal low angle shot. This keeps up that off sense and gives them power as they tower over the camera and frame, and so look much more threatening and dominant. We then get a spiraling shot away from Lucas as we see he is surrounded by the Primids. This is simply a dramatic telling of how Lucas is surrounded. And for another one, the camera rotates around Lucas from a close-up angle to clearly show his fear and isolation, again in a dramatic manner. And then we see a foot smash down onto the frame nearby, before seeing the Porky statue from that classically dominant low-angle shot. Running away, we first see Lucas's feet to emphasize the act of running away before seeing a head-on shot of the moment. Here we see how the statue is giant compared to Lucas, minimizing any power Lucas had beforehand. Lucas falling out of shot adds to this even further, and with the statue getting overbearingly close and Lucas huddled on the floor, we're introduced to another new character. First their voice, then their attack, which has a dramatic use of sound whereby it is muted at the crux of the statue's fall, and then finally his appearance as he lands magically on the ground. And for Ness's final move, the camera uses another dramatic turn from the statue to Ness, frozen in time just as the statue explodes. And with Porky defeated, Wario's on the scene and trying to turn the boys into trophies with his cannon. In order to save Lucas, Ness barges him out of the way of the shot, which the camera emphasizes by slowing down, changing the background to a solid black in order for the audience to focus their attention entirely on the boys and the arrow, and having the camera rotate 180 degrees onto Ness as he is transformed. We then see that Wario is getting way too close to Ness and Lucas, as is presented with this 3-step shot of Wario walking closer and closer to the camera, and Lucas runs away once again with the diagonally off camera. And Wario looks at the NESS trophy with some lightning pathetic fallacy to add to the horror Lucas is witnessing, his laughter continuing on even as Lucas sprints through the rain. And the scene ends with a final wide shot swiftly pulling away as Wario and Ness become smaller and smaller within the soaking environment. Okay, next up we're jumping ahead again, mostly because the early-ish scenes are pretty basic for the most part. We're now more than halfway through the whole story, but are still being introduced to some new characters. Starting off, we get a very harsh low angle on a giant Rob, so much so that the depth of field can be seen clearly by how the Rob's torso and head are blurred because of how distant they are from the feet in this shot. Anyway, we see that Rob is completely enveloped by Pikmin, if you're familiar with the franchise at least. The camera uses a series of small motions to establish further the little actions of the Pikmin against the Rob, though the sound design here makes it quite clear that they're doing very little damage, if any at all. Once we see Rob's face, it activates before we change to a low-angle mid-shot of Rob's eyes flashing before spinning his entire top half, clearly belittling any effort from the Pikmin. Next we see the aftermath as we see multiple shots of Pikmin falling to the ground, with most of them dying too. Back to Rob and we get a kind of eyeline match as he looks down towards the ground, allowing the camera to turn to look at what is being observed. This uses the same technique as an eyeline match, but simply has the camera turn around rather than use a different shot entirely. The camera then uses a close-up shot to clearly establish the character to the player as Captain Olimar. We then get another eyeline match as the red Pikmin points and Olimar turns to see what is being shown. Here we see an extreme wide shot of seemingly nothing but a glimmer before a mid-shot of the blue Falcon, telling the audience that the next character introduction is Captain Falcon, if the players are already familiar with the franchise. We then get a signature Mute City theme in the background. Changing to a side-on wide shot, we effectively see Captain Falcon leap out into the sky before shifting to his perspective to clearly show that he is tackling the giant Rob. After impact, we see a low-angle shot from behind Rob as he falls to the ground. This acts to dramatically show his demise as well as take away all of his power dominance in the shot. And finally, the music cuts out for comedic effect as Captain Falcon poses for the camera, killing 99% of the remaining Pikmin as he does so. And the wide-angle shot from behind Olimar along with the wind act to emphasize the comedic silence as Olimar is left with one Pikmin and a view of that. Next up, you're just gonna have to roll with it because we're coming back to some characters who've gone through a lot since you last saw them. So this scene takes place on Meta Knight's ship, the Halberd. Fox is flying in the R-Wing and attacking it because it's not actually under Meta Knight's control, but the bad guys. We first can see an establishing shot of the R-Wing dodging fire and coming towards the Halberd. With shots firing from both opponents, we then get this dramatic shot of Peach with her parasol, who's here after being kidnapped multiple times by multiple groups, with a giant explosion behind her. This is simply a comedic shot and isn't intended to show malice or heroism either. It's just a visual juxtaposition of character and environment. We then see the R-Wing get hit, which is dramatically presented by a brief freeze in time so we can see the impact line of the damage. And with a dramatic lean from Fox, we see the R-Wing spinning wildly out of shot, dramatically showing the struggle and downfall of the R-Wing. And with a final spree of shooting, we see the surface of the Halberd hit, and Peach reacting this time to the nearby explosions. Why she's still hanging around on the surface is beyond me. In response, we see a quick close-up of Sheik, who ZELDA transformed into while on the Halberd for practical reasons, as she jumped high into the sky in retaliation. For that, we see a harsh high angle as the Halberd quickly shrinks into the distance. With a flash of white, we see Fox blinded like us for a moment. Here we get another quick eyeline match as Fox looks through the windshield to see Sheik standing over the frame from a low angle, again dominating. And on attacking the windshield, the background cuts away to a solid red, which is commonly done in cartoons to emphasize the magnitude of a hit to make it seem more cutting. The slow motion also adds to this more. We then quickly see them land and charge towards each other, composed opposite each other, not to show good versus evil, but simply rivalry. This is then comedically stopped by Peach's hand and high, followed by a swift turn of their heads onto an eyeline match of Peach's hands holding tea, and Sheik already drinking. This then turns to a wide shot, pulling away from the characters as they calm down and drink tea. A very abrupt and unexpected end to the battle. And the final scene we're going to cover today is basically the last scene to include all the characters doing something more than standing around and reacting. We're going to the big cannon scene. It begins with a shot of a black hole completely covering the entire frame, with an ominous sound playing to tell us we're observing the bad guys at this moment. We then see a giant weapon pull out from the darkness, with an extreme wide shot being used to fully grasp the colossal side of the machine. Next, we see the camera pan across its barrel as it lights up in preparation to fire. Oddly enough, it's composed in the classic heroic composition, that being that it looks from left to right on the frame. This is a little odd to me, but seems to be a running theme with many Nintendo games. Who knows? Anyway, upon firing we're given a low-angle shot of the cannon to emphasize its power once more, before the camera cuts to a diagonal shot showing where it hits off in the distance. And the camera rumbles as the distance grows into another giant black hole. Back to the cannon, and we're now slowly moving closer to reveal it is almost a city. And atop all of that is our main bad guys, Ganondorf and Bowser, who have already been officially introduced to the story multiple times over at this point. And with a dramatic zoom onto Ganondorf's face, we're given another eyeline match as we see a glimmer to the left of the cannon's target. Zooming in, we see it's the halberd, now under control of the good guys. Here's another establishing dramatic shot of the halberd as it flies over the ocean. This time the shot is low-angled and rumbling for that dramatic sense of power. Back to Ganondorf, and we see from behind him his gesture for the cannon to attack them. By being behind Ganondorf, we get to effectively see the effect of his order, as well as to add a little power to him, as it's almost like he's so powerful at this moment that you don't even need to see his face. You are not worthy to. Here's a couple of shots of more guns to show the order taking place, and back to the halberd. Now we see it dramatically dodge the shots as it darts ever closer. And with a series of very quick shots, we build up to the eventual event where the halberd gets a direct hit of fire, which the shot shows with a diagonal wide shot with the background fully disintegrated into black. Though I imagine red would have had a similar, if not more powerful effect. Next we see a harsh high-angle pan across the halberd as different parts of it explode spontaneously and the head rips off. And jumping to an extreme wide shot from the cannon, we belittle the halberd's efforts as its explosion is seen tiny on the frame, as if it was never very significant. The wide-angle shot also shows how far away the halberd really was, whilst the low angle again empowers the cannon. And out of the explosion comes a bunch of flying vehicles: Samus's gunship, Fox's Arwing, Captain Falcon's Falcon Flyer, and Captain Onima's Hockatate ship. And now the main theme picks up, as the hero's side hasn't failed yet. We see the villains react to the twist before a cacophony of more gunfire. The heroes are given a harsh high angle as they fly through the fire, empowering them as they are moving directly upwards, and so is empowering. The camera then changes to move behind them, which emphasizes the mass array of attacks their vehicles are dodging. Briefly over to the cannon, we see it composed opposite to all the shots beforehand, potentially to show its literal lack of composure and desperation to hit something at this moment, as well as to show off more of the wild attacks it's spewing. Here's another dramatic shot of the ship slipping through, and with the cannon distracted forwards, we see a glimmer in the sky which transitions to a zoom in to reveal Kirby on a dragoon. And on impact, the cannon is given the same technique of slowing down time, showing a line of damage, and cutting the background to a solid black. And now we get a series of explosion shots, with the final one being diagonal to show its lack of stability. Ganondorf and Bowser slowly walk back into the void, defeated and vengeful, as the ships and Kirby fly dramatically over the cannon and into the void themselves. The Hockatate ship getting the least impressive shot as it seems rickety and close to defeat from all the falling debris. Each void entrance ends with a wide angle shot as the camera attempts to not get too close in order to add suspense to the audience as to what actually lies beyond. And with a final extreme wide shot, we see the cannon in a fiery mess attached to the giant black hole housing it. And with that, I'm gonna call it a day. That was a nice chunk of the filmmaking behind the Subspace Emissary. Now then, as per usual, every week you get to decide what game gets covered next, and this time I'm giving you the option between two post-apocalyptic zombie games. So, what would you prefer? A video analysing the cutscenes of The Walking Dead, or one analysing The Last of Us? Same theme, different approach. Let me know what you'd like. As for now, my name's been Daz, you didn't really care, and I'll see you in a bit.